Okay, great. Well, welcome. This is Willamette Week's endorsement interview for House District 50. Since your opponent is not here, Representative, I'll just have you go. It's just going to be a conversation between you and me. But can you first take a minute or two to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you're running for the seat?
For sure. My name is Ricky Luis. I use he, him pronouns. I am currently state representative for District 50, which covers majority of Gresham and a small portion of East Portland. I've been a legislator for just a little bit over a year and a half, going to 2 years. First term legislator. A little bit about me and my background. Before holding office as a legislator, I sat on the Reynolds School Board of Directors, and I held that position for 4 years.
Sorry, you were Reynolds School Board chair or?
Just school board director,
okay.
yeah, just no chair. But I was in that position for from 2017 to 2022. And that was my first elected office experience working in local school policy and basically following state guidelines on how to run a school district from a school board perspective. But before that, I volunteered in many campaigns and initiatives, and I growing up didn't really see myself as an elect running for office ever, but things change and we're here. So I've worked in local government for over 8 years. I have gained local government experience, worked with Multnomah County, worked for the city of Gresham currently, and have over 5 years of elected office experience. Yes.
Okay, and what do you do for them?
I work as a community services coordinator in the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay. And you've been in that job for how
long? In the Parks and Recreation Department, 6 months.
Okay, so pretty new.
Yeah, but before that, I was in a different department, same titles, same job position.
And is that a lot of working with constituents, or what's sort of day to day?
Yeah. So a lot of it is just basically any complaints, any concerns, they come to me, and I'm like the middle person who figures out who that complaint or concern should go to. So that's a big part of my job. In addition to that, I help run youth recreation activities, adult recreation activities, mostly around sports, and also serve as a citywide Spanish translator. So
a citywide Spanish what?
Translator.
Oh, got it. Okay, cool.
I think here, let me take my headphones off.
I think it might be this computer too. It's a little wacky. So why are you running for this seat?
I'm running to get reelected. I feel like ever since I got the experience of being a school board member, I found out that a lot of the guidelines and the standards are set at the state level, and I just remember being frustrated in the way that we were so tied down to whatever the state was recommending to us. So I feel like I wanted to get myself in the shoes of setting statewide standards and policies and recommendations, and be able to be a local school board advocate in the state level. And I feel for me, education is one of my biggest passions and priorities. And I just know that there's just so much work to do. And I feel like a term was not enough. And I have tremendous support from local community members, organizations, and just the backing of the majority of the community in my district. And I think there's no question I want to focus in education, focus on higher education, and be able to open the doors for the future generations of
Can you elaborate a little bit on could you give me a few specifics of what state kind of parameters that you were really frustrated by while on the school board?
I think a lot of it is funding. I mean, you look at statistics nationwide, Oregon ranks pretty low around the average teacher pay, which has been very concerning ever since COVID. I think you see that in many different professions. You talk about nurses, you talk about grocery store workers. So I think just working with the budget that we had, we just knew that there was a much higher need and with the resources that we were getting. And I know that we've been investing a record amount of dollars in the state to be able to address these issues, but in school districts in East Multnomah County, you have to really invest even more, because those are the cities and the districts that are being underserved compared to other school districts across the state of Oregon.
So you mentioned that we've had record high investments in education, right, in the state. So, but it sounds like still a problem for the schools in your district, at least, is still a money
Yep.
problem. Do you think that means we need to, I mean, is that, does the state need to sort of reevaluate how it allocates dollars, do you think? Or do you think it's more of an issue of the state just needs more money for schools in general?
I think it's a mix of both. We need to reevaluate where we are investing our dollars, see what's working, what's not working. I'm a big proponent of setting accountability measures and metrics of trying to figure out what's working and what's not working, and what can we do differently, right? Instead of just continuing to do potentially the same thing. And mind you, I'm new to this, so I'm 2 years in, so I'm still learning the ropes. But I mean, there's no question, ever since I was a student in the same school district, we always heard about cuts. We always heard about cutting of programs, cutting of teachers, because there was not enough money. Now, I mean, that could potentially be tracked back to the amount of money we're getting from the state, but also we have to look into how our school districts are set up in order to invest those dollars. And I give my hats off to a lot of school board directors who are doing this on a volunteer basis, but they have a lot of work to do trying to figure out how they can run the district with the money that they get. And we're seeing, at least in my district, there's just more, that need is high and the resources are just not there yet.
Yeah. Do you think the state needs to pass another tax? I mean, how do we get more money for education as a whole?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm educating myself on the taxes that we've passed before, the resources that are going into the education system in the last 10, 20 years. I think it's a conversation that we need to have, whether we want to introduce taxes or we want to reevaluate where our money is going to. I think that's a conversation that we as a whole has to have.
What are a few programs either in your district or statewide that you think might deserve a little bit of scrutiny as far as if they're working, if money needs to be reallocated?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I mean, there's programs like AVID that do a rather intentional work with students who fit their requirements, mostly are low income, first generation students who are trying to seek a higher education opportunity. I would say even, I know this is not really tied into the state funds, but programs like TRIO, College Possible, all those programs that are working, they're providing wraparound services for students, are in need of a lot of support, because they just don't have the capacity to serve the amount of students that need that help. And yeah, go ahead.
So what programs do you think though need to be looked at as far as, are they spending money correctly? Are they maybe where things could be cut a little bit or pared down?
We're still doing that research. Personally, for me, like I said, I've been at this for 2 years, and I feel like that's something that we could potentially have an answer to next session, and see what we if there's an opportunity, if there's an avenue of potentially cutting something that's not working, how does that look like? But just talking to several school districts across the state of Oregon, in my district, there's not even enough to cut at this point without being detrimental in the student's education experience.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like what you're kind of getting at here is that we just need more money in education. But many taxpayers, especially in Multnomah County, but I think in the state, I mean, I guess Republicans always run on a platform of lowering taxes. But I think a lot of people, even liberals, at least in Portland, are like, I can't deal with more taxes. Yeah. I mean, how do we get around that if we want to fund education more, but we know that tax isn't going to be approved?
Well, we sit in a very unique situation here in Gresham, because we have a cap on how much taxes we can collect because of Measure 5. And I think it might also mix to Measure 50. So you look at the city of Gresham and the comparison of cities that are similar size, like we can compare Hillsborough, we can compare Beaverton. You look at the taxes that are being collected for those cities is completely, there's a huge difference in that. And we in Gresham are struggling not only to help fund education, but also help fund just regular basic needs, right? Like in the city of Gresham, 95% of the general fund goes towards public safety.
95% of your guys' general.
About 95% goes to public safety.
Wow.
And so that itself, it's very hard to be able to provide the services, provide the resources that I know our neighbors need, our residents need, but with a measure that went into place when I was like 5 years old, it is now really affecting a city like Gresham. Maybe it's benefiting other cities, but it's affecting us in a very drastic way.
Yeah. What's the bill that you championed or brought to brought to session? And I know you're a rookie compared to a lot of other people, but what's the bill that you're most proud of that you either championed or brought to session in the past year and a half?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I mean, I can talk about the most recent one. It's the IITC bill. I can't remember the bill number now, but I think it was 4117, House Bill 4117. That was one of them that we found out that Oregonians are missing out on about $130 million of unclaimed credits when it comes to earned income tax credit, for those who qualified. And we ranked, I think, one of the lowest states in around outreach and education and just claiming of those resources that are staying in the federal funds, in the federal government. So one of the bills that we passed this short session just a couple of months ago was being able to do a $4 million investment that will help create an intentional outreach and services for folks who don't know about the earned income tax credit, to teach them what that is, how they qualify, and how they can claim these federal dollars that are illegal. Say it again.
Is that a statewide program or?
That is correct. That's a statewide program focusing in rural communities, BIPOC communities, Native Indigenous communities, and helping low-income families be able to learn about this. So I would say that's one of the most proud of, because I know it's a bill that's going to help many people across the state of Oregon.
What's one bill that you're excited to bring if you're reelected?
That's a good question. There's a lot of them. I think, man, I'm trying to figure out where I can choose one. I don't think it's necessarily a bill, but as part of the task force on higher education for underrepresented students, we're finding a lot of things that we can do differently and being able to break down even more barriers for students who pursue higher education and be able to seek the profession they want to seek. We're seeing such low numbers on the workforce. You talk about nurses, you talk about teachers, and we're hearing from a lot of students that want to pursue those careers that they just simply cannot access being able to even try to educate themselves and getting that diploma or a certificate.
Are those money barriers, or?
A lot of it is money barriers. A lot of it is just accessibility. I think a lot of students don't have housing, and that's one of the biggest concerns. There's food insecurity. There's like, for instance, there's some nursing programs that exist and where they don't allow you to take on a part-time job so you can focus, directly on the stuff that you need to focus on, which makes sense. You want to make sure that you get educated and make sure you intake all the important stuff in the healthcare system, but also those folks need to eat, those folks need to pay bills. And how do we help those students who are going to be first frontline workers in the future? So
what explicitly are you working on to remove those barriers?
Well, we're working on about 40 pieces of legislation potentially that are coming out of that committee that address housing, that address food insecurities, that address the Oregon Pell Grant, the Oregon Opportunity Grant. I mean, it's just the majority of a lot of different things that are going into this task force that we're trying to solve a problem one step at a time. So I'm hoping that we will have a higher education committee or subcommittee next session, and where we can put stuff on the record and vet these ideas and be able to listen to testimony and really work with our higher education partners, our business partners, our students, our alumni, or people who have stopped out of the higher education system, and really figure out how we in the state of Oregon can come up with a solution that just provides more accessibility for higher education.
One question I think we'd like to ask candidates is for them to reflect on their time in the legislature. Again, some people have 20 years, some people have 5 years, but talk about a failure you've had while in the legislature. Do you have any failures of note, or that something that weighs on you, or something you wish you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think not. I mean, not. It is kind of legislative wise. I think one thing that I still kind of think it's a failure on my part, just not being a family, being a dad. I think there was an opportunity. There was a time in where my daughter was in the ICU, and that we had to pass a housing packet during a special session. And I want to say this was in like October of last year, September, October of last year, and we just didn't have enough votes to make this package pass, and I had to leave my family behind in the ICU, my wife and my daughter, who was 2 weeks old, with 1 hour of sleep, going to the Capitol, and next thing you know, showing up, and my colleagues, most of my colleagues in the Republican side didn't show up. And basically, I think we ended up voting on this like hours later. And I think I think when you talk about failure, I think I failed my wife and I failed my daughter by not being there for them and showing up doing my legislative duties as I was voted to do, and just seeing the disappointment that my colleagues did not show up on time, and they showed up hours later for whatever reason. And I think for me, that was a failure.
What about a failure as it relates specifically to a bill that you really wanted to pass that, you felt like you didn't navigate well, or it didn't get passed, or something a little bit more specific to?
Yeah, there was a bill. We were trying to pass a DACA bill that what had provided basically a one-time fund to help our DACA recipients in the state of Oregon get one-time resources to be able to renew their DACA status in the state of Oregon. And we talked to many partners, we talked to many of my colleagues, and we were confident that we were going to get it through the finish line, but unfortunately, it obviously didn't get to the finish line. And I think when you look at right now what the Supreme Court is doing, what happened in Roe v. Wade, DACA is one of those hot topics that could get overturned with the Supreme Court. And I feel like when you look at our DACA recipients in the state of Oregon, they are paying their fair share of taxes. They're paying their local and federal and state taxes, and a lot of them, unfortunately, lost their jobs or just lost their opportunity to work full time when the pandemic happened. But also, some of them were frontline workers that provided so much resources for their communities, and this was a way for in my opinion, was a way to show appreciation. Just letting them know, like, the state of Oregon has your back, and here's some support, and where you can renew your DACA application for 2 more years. I mean, having to pay $500 just to continue to work and have some sort of status in this country is detrimental for many. I think I don't have $500 that I can drop every 2 years just so I can continue to provide for the state and this country. And I feel like this was a bill that I thought would just show a little bit of appreciation from the state level. It didn't pass, and fortunately, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of where you maybe diverge from your party on an issue? Like you sort of go against the status quo, where you go against sort of the Democratic grain, if you will, on an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think recently we were trying to figure out how we can provide more public safety resources at least in my district. I think you look at everything that went down a couple months ago, a couple years ago, and with Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd situation, and I just felt there was such a disconnect between I feel like you're either on the left side, you're rooting for this side, or on the right side, you were rooting for this side. And I'm not sure if I didn't keep track of where my colleagues were at, but I feel like for me, I wanted to just bridge that gap and build that trust again, and be able to work with our local law enforcement, our public safety partners, and be able to find the solution that will keep our community safe. I'm knocking on doors in the part of my campaign, and one of the biggest concerns that people have is public safety. They just don't feel safe in their communities, and that's the same answer we're getting in the Centennial neighborhood, in the Persimmon neighborhood. The same answer we're getting in the Rockwood neighborhood is the fear of safety. So I'm in conversations with public safety leaders and trying to figure out how we can come up with a Gresham solution to help our local law enforcement with the resources that they need, and be able to bring that sense of safety back to our communities. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and quite frankly, sometimes I'm afraid to go outside because we're hearing gunshots, we're hearing sirens, and that could one day be right outside our house. Who knows? So it's a fear that I have as well, and I know there's a fear that a lot of my constituents have.
So you support, robust funding for law enforcement. You think that's an important part?
I support that, and I support wraparound ideas around how we can expand unique opportunities that are in partnership with law enforcement. One example I can give you is we passed a $2 million packet, is the Gresham Youth Services Prevention and Intervention Program that is working with the Gresham Police Department to build that gap, that bridge among community and public safety and local law enforcement with youth recreation and youth services. So part of those programs, since we're partnering with IRCO, Latino Network, POIC, Underground, which is Underground CrossFit, which is a CrossFit program that was built with these funds, and kids are able to do CrossFit sometimes with law enforcement. So just building those relationships from a young age and building the trust is something that also I'm hoping to continue to push in the next session.
What do you see as, you mentioned that public safety was a pretty big concern for your constituents. What are one or two other issues that you feel are top of mind for your voters?
For sure, housing is another one. Housing accessibility and affordability. I think that's a huge one. And I think the third one will be homelessness. Mm-hmm. But the homelessness one is also one of it kind of goes into the housing and the housing affordability, because I asked people that I talked to, I was like, what do you think is one way we can combat homelessness in East County? And 9 times out of 10, I'm hearing housing affordability and accessibility. So I know was one of those things that we're going to continue to push in the next session, to be able to get the resources we need to provide those housing opportunities, and also be able to create and to think further on as well. There's a lot of people who have been renters in our communities who potentially don't have the financial literacy education on how to buy a home or be a first-time home buyer. So that's also something that we're looking into, and be able to build generational wealth among first generation BIPOC families that are potentially looking to buy a first home.
So Gresham has, and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Gresham have a bit of a more aggressive sweeps policy?
No,
not
that I know of.
Okay, I'm thinking
that's Portland.
Yeah, I'm thinking of do you know We Heart Portland?
Nope.
What about We Heart Seattle?
Nope.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of. So you guys have, I think someone who works on your homelessness team. His name is Kevin Dahlgren.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, he's one of, I believe, 5 members that are in the homelessness team.
I read something last year that was saying, he kind of started a program that, I don't know. I'll get back to you on that.
Please do.
But my understanding was that Gresham was sweeping people more aggressively, or I don't know.
And if that's happening, I would probably know about it, and
Yeah.
there would be a conversation between me and city council and mayor about that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, do you think Gresham, like, you know, since I'm a Portlander, I think often, you know, I don't think a whole lot about Gresham.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I know, but I mean, I think it's a lot of Portlanders, you know, truly. And do you think people in Gresham feel that way? Do you think they feel like somewhat neglected by the, you know, big urban people, or what?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, I feel that way. You look at, unfortunately, anything that happens in Portland, it gets obviously reported, and it's blasted, and people think that cities like Gresham, Troutdale, Woodbridge, and Fairview are doing the same thing because we're just cities neighboring Portland, but that's not the case. I can tell you that all those cities are uniquely doing different things that are innovative, that are different, and that are intentionally built around building community. And that is not being unfortunately reported because of whatever happens in Portland is what takes over the news.
Yeah.
So yeah, we feel neglected, and I feel like that also plays a big role on the services and the resources that East County gets. And we're trying to change that and be able to share what we are doing different, what we are doing, and how it's working for those, depending on whatever we want to talk about, because I feel like the cities out here are doing things differently than Portland, but unfortunately we don't get to share that story as much.
Yeah. What are two things happening in Gresham, either currently or recently, that you think should have been reported that just never were?
We have one of the best, I think, in my opinion, one of the best rental inspection programs in the state. When you look at renters' rights and being able to advocate for renters, there's legitimately a department in the city of Gresham that takes care of complaints or incidents that residents put on towards the city of Gresham in an anonymous way. So this department goes to these rental units, inspects them, looks for what's going on, and gives the landlord a list of things they need to fix. And I will tell you this, I was, not that it's not anonymous anymore, but my family took part of that program as we were renters before. And the reason why we were complaining is because we had mold issues, we had electrical issues, we had just a lot of different plumbing issues that we would tell the landlord numerous amounts of time about it, and nothing would be done, but rent would always increase every 6 months. And thanks to this program, I feel like that Gresham has, some of it was able to get fixed, but it was just like a Band-Aid fix.
Yeah.
And I feel like if this program would just get more resources, more resources, they would be doing a lot more work. So that's one thing that I feel Gresham is doing very uniquely. And I think another thing is how we are going about public safety. I think when you look at Gresham right now, the city council just approved a couple months ago the highest budget for fire and police, using also ARPA funds, because the city council was just getting a lot of concerned citizens and residents talking about the lack of public safety. And I feel like we're also holding really intentional conversations that are trauma informed, that are focused around BIPOC communities as well, and being able to build that bridge and that to have a buy-in from the community that this is something that we need to continue to prioritize moving forward.
Who's been your biggest donor this election cycle?
I will have to look at Warstar. Top of my head, I would say IBW. I think it was one of the biggest donors.
Okay. Is it IBEW or just IBW?
IBEW local
Okay.
48.
Got it. Okay. Are there any? I don't know a whole lot about your opponent. Do you know if they have any notable endorsements or unions or anything? Or okay.
Not that I know of.
What's the voter registration split in your district?
I believe we are in the +12 district.
Okay. So pretty solid. And then what's the demographic of like race wise? What's the split in your district?
Yeah, it's my district is majority white. With the next would be Hispanic, Latino, and then African American.
Okay. Do you know-
There's over 70 languages that are spoken in my district.
Okay.
And what was gonna be your question? Sorry.
What do you know, like percentage wise roughly?
I want to say it's about 60% white, about 15% Hispanic, and about 9% African American.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Great. What's an agency you think, a state agency that you think legislators or the governor needs to take a little bit closer look at to make sure they're using funds wisely, they're being managed correctly? If you could kind of sort of if you could put a microscope up to any state agency today, which one would it be?
That's a good question. I think just for me, I think looking at just the contingency between freeway expansion and being and like all that conversation about transportation, I feel like ODOT might be one that I would want to learn more and see what's going on there. That's the only one that came to the top of my head.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I forgot to ask you at the beginning. How old will you be on October 19th?
28.
28. Okay, great. And then yeah, I think we'll just move on to our fun question, which isn't really that fun, but if the world were ending tomorrow, what's the one food you would eat as your last food? Not a meal, like a food.
I will have a pupusa, which is a very traditional Salvadorian dish. It's the way I describe it is 100 times more delicious crunch wrap.
That's nice. More delicious than a crunch wrap. Okay. Well, thank you, Representative, so much. Really appreciate it. Sorry your opponent couldn't be here. It's always more interesting when there's two people to talk to. But yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.